You don't have a place here anymore. That's what my boy told me, said it just as plain as day, like he was checking off his weekend chores. No yelling, no fuss. He just looked like he was done with it all. The living room got real quiet, with only the fridge humming down the hall. My daughter-in-law, she just shifted on the sofa, crossing her legs, with this real polite but pleased look on her face. The lamp threw a sharp beam on the wood floorboards I had sanded myself years ago. I didn't say a word back, didn't beg or even let out a sigh. I just stood there, my hands shaking a little on the leather strap of my old wristwatch. My chest felt empty, like a church after everyone's gone home. In that quiet, I figured out something even worse than being told I wasn't wanted. They had practiced this whole speech. But what they never understand, those two who thought they were calling all the shots, was that they were the ones who were gonna pay for it in the end. Remember to subscribe to our channel and drop a comment saying where you're watching from. My daughter-in-law, Amelia, finally said, her voice smooth as butter, as if she was offering me a cup of tea instead of a boot out the door. We don't want this to turn into a whole big scene. I just turned my head a little. Her words were soft, but the message was hard as steel. Amelia, I said, hearing how quiet my voice was. You never did like a scene. My son, Leo, just kept his eyes on the far wall. There was this framed picture we hung up together last spring, a map of some big lake like Lake Erie with the shoreline drawn in blue. His jaw got tight looking at his reflection in the glass. Dad, he said, let's be adults about this. We've gone over the situation. There was a skinny brown folder half hidden under some magazines on the coffee table, an architecture magazine, an old hunting gear catalog, and a glossy brochure for a resort in Phoenix. The folder slid out just enough for me to see a black scribble on it, like a bruise. Walter Sterling. I watched that word like you watch a wildcat show up at the edge of the woods. Just a normal thing, bound to happen, all planned out. What situation? I asked, real gentle-like. You know, Leo said. The setup. Ever since Mom passed away, ever since you moved in, it's just time for you to have better help. We found a great place. A place? Amelia jumped in, shrugged in her shoulders like she was sorry. Not, a place. It's more like a retirement community, with bingo nights and meals cooked for you. You'd have your own little apartment. My watch kept ticking on my wrist, a beat only I could hear. Old leather, a brass buckle, my father's initials faded on the back. I held my hand steady. This is something you both decided on, I said. Leo nodded once. The lamplight carved new lines into his face that weren't there when he was a 12-year-old asking me if the Cardinals would finally get to the World Series, or when he was 20 and called from school to tell me he got that internship in New Mexico. Lines come from the choices you make. Some you get from your family. Some you draw all on your own. What about my room? I asked. What about my tools? We made room in the workshop, Amelia said a little too fast. Leo cleared off a shelf. Then she turned to him, like I wasn't there at all. And honey, we can call Tom about the truck. The truck? I asked. The pickup, she said. It's old, Walter. It's not safe for you to be driving a big old thing like that anymore, but Tom might give us something for it. I looked at my son. He looked at the map. Those words, no meaning, don't feel like a cut. They sink in. They make the ground move under your feet. They rearrange everything inside your chest until nothing feels like it belongs. They also split your life into two parts, before and after. Before my son practiced my send-off. After I found out the whole plan was sitting on the coffee table next to my name. A yellow sticky note was stuck there like a little flag. Notary at 7 p.m. 7 o'clock glowed on the clock in the kitchen. Just a couple of hours. It was neat and tidy. They had a meeting planned to make my being gone official. Let's not decide on all of this tonight, I said. Amelia smiled again. Her eyes didn't join in. We already found a place, Walter. They're holding the spot because, Leo explained, of your background. She gestured vaguely at my knees and the little walking stick propped up by the bookshelf. They're okay with you coming as soon as Monday. And the paperwork? I asked. My voice stayed even, steady as the ticking inside my skin. She grabbed the manila folder and slid it out carefully. Just a couple of signatures, she said, tapping a corner. Power of attorney for your health, so we can move fast if, or when, you need help. She looked at Leo. And a little paperwork thing for the house. Since you helped us with the loan last year, it just makes the title simpler so we can take care of the bills without both airing you. A paperwork thing. I looked at the edge of the paper sticking out. I've seen a lot of papers in my time. Sometimes the most important word is small and easy to miss. Quitclaim doesn't yell. It just sits there quietly, waiting. Leo shifted. Dad, this is the right thing to do. We've done the math. We're already paying for your groceries and your electricity and all those TV services you don't even watch. Amelia added. We're not trying to be mean. It's just you're not helping, and emotionally. The word got stuck in her throat like a nut. It's not good for the kids. They didn't have kids. That's when I realized she was just talking from a script, meant for an audience that wasn't there yet. Maybe the notary. Maybe a neighbor who'd show up to cheer them on. Maybe the idea they had of themselves, good people making tough choices for a hard-headed old man. The fridge's hum got a little louder, like the power itself wanted to fill the quiet. The house breathed, the air conditioner kicking on, a floorboard creaking as the evening cooled down. This is what a home does for you if you let it. It gathers things. It holds them. It's like a box for the stuff you can't carry with your own two hands. My son, who had colic and would only go to sleep when I drove him around the block at 3 o'clock in the morning, was now a grown man with an insurance card in his wallet, and a wife whose hair never fell out of her bun. He believed in systems. He believed in signatures. He believed he'd found the paper that could turn his own father into a stack of forms. I'd like a drink of water, I said finally. If you don't mind? Nobody moved, so I went ahead and did it. I walked to the kitchen and let that small, normal action be the thing that separated me from the room. The light switch went on, the fluorescent light buzzing to life. I reached for a glass and saw my hand become my father's hand for just a second, the veins like little blue roads, the skin telling its honest story. I filled the glass and didn't drink. From the doorway, Leo just stood there. Dad, don't overthink how this sounds. His throat moved. At least that was a human thing to do. We have to set boundaries. That's what families do. Families do 1,000 things. They set boundaries. They get rid of them. They move them around when the map changes. When I think of family, I think of a little red wagon in our first driveway, of a midnight trip for strep throat, of a school project that wouldn't stay up until I used fishing line to hold it. I think of my late wife Helen crying in the pantry after her diagnosis because she broke a glass in the sink and thought I'd see it as a weakness. Boundaries, I said. Sure. We'll give you a minute, Amelia called from the living room. And then we can go over the forms together. The notary will be right on time. Don't worry. I already texted him our address again. Our address? That phrase belonged in more than one place. It was on envelopes from the county treasurer. It was in a filing cabinet I kept in the back of the closet, behind a folded blanket. It also lived in a safe deposit box on 4th Street, 3rd drawer down, 2nd key, because I never learned to trust my memory more than a piece of paper. I carried the water back to the living room and set the glass down on a coaster I made from a piece of our old oak tree after last year's storm. Coasters are like little promises we make to wood. We won't mess up what holds us up. Let me make sure I've got this right, I said, and sat down on the edge of the chair with the armrest my old hound dog used to chew when it thundered outside. You want me to sign a power of attorney to you, both of you, so you can make my medical choices. You want me to sign a quitclaim deed to get my name off the house title. And you want me to move into a community living place by Monday. That's right, Dad, Leo said. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I answered, not being unkind. It's all right. If that's what you want, just say it how it is. Amelia took a breath that made her shoulders go up and down like she was doing a little dance. We want what's best for you and us. Boundaries, Walter. She tilted her head a bit. You always taught Leo to be decisive. He's just being decisive. The funny thing about advice is that it gets old. It either becomes wisdom or it becomes proof. I had said those words once before. Yeah. At a kitchen table with a math worksheet between us and a coffee stain spreading toward the edge. Decisive meant picking the right answer when you're scared of getting it wrong. It hadn't meant getting rid of the person who fed you. All right, I said. I just let the words sit there, plain as day. All right, Leo repeated, blinking. He hadn't seen that one coming. Not yet. I'll read everything over, I said. I don't sign things I haven't read, and I don't read when I'm thirsty. I finally picked up my glass and took a slow drink. The water tasted a little like metal, like the copper pipes it came from, pipes that were older than Amelia's patience. You can leave the folder right here. I tapped the coffee table. I'll take it to the dining room when I'm finished. Amelia looked at Leo. He nodded and pushed the folder forward with 2 fingers, like it might bite him. We'll be in the kitchen, he said, moving away like a deer that heard a twig snap. When they were gone, and the fridge's hum took over the house again, I opened the folder. I went through the pages, not like a man doing what he's told, but like a carpenter checking his measurements twice. The quitclaim was on top. Underneath it, a pre-filled healthcare paper with boxes already checked. Do not resuscitate was, thank goodness, left blank. A third packet, this one surprised me more than it should have, was a paper saying a community could manage my mail. I didn't feel angry, not the kind that makes you yell. What I felt was a clean line coming into view. On my side of it, there was memory, hard work, a house payment made on the first of every month because that's how you show people you're dependable. On their side, there was a plan, made to be quick and easy, rushed along by a notary who'd smell like wintergreen gum and leave a blue stamp on my table. There are different kinds of power. The one that makes the least noise is paperwork that's already filled out. The older I got, the more I understood that. When Helen got sick, I learned to keep 2 folders, one at home, one in the bank. When Leo bought this house, I learned to read the small print on a refinance, and made sure my name stayed right where it had always been. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I knew that trust and being careful weren't enemies. I closed the folder and let my eyes fall on the family pictures on the wall by the stairs. That staircase has a little creak on the 3rd step, always has. In the photos, time had a way of bending back on itself. There was Leo at 6, with a bowl cut and a smile with a missing tooth, holding a fish he swore weighed 5 pounds. There was Helen in her blue dress, sunlight in her hair. There I was, younger, wearing a company cap with wood dust on my shoulder. I tried to see the line between then and now. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe it had just shifted under our feet while we were busy with life. I got up. My knee complained, then settled down. I took the folder with me, not because they asked, but because I needed to feel its weight in my hand. In the hall, I stopped and put my hand on the wall where the paint never quite matched after we fixed the leak in April. The plaster felt cool, like the house was a body and I could still feel its heart beating. In my room, the back bedroom with the window looking out at the oak stump, I sat at the little desk Helen had insisted we keep because someday you'll want a place to write. The desk had 2 drawers. On the left, a stack of old receipts held together with a rubber band. On the right, a spiral notebook with a green cover, the kind you buy at the grocery store when school starts, and everything smells a little like plastic. Inside the notebook, dates ran like fence posts, neat and known. The title on the first page read, in my block letters, After Helen. I added today's date. I wrote one line, Leo. You have no meaning in this house anymore. Then I stopped. I just listened to the house. I let the words sit on the paper like a seed on top of snow. Some seeds wait their time. The cold doesn't kill them, it just teaches them something. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. I let it ring twice. Then a text came in. Hey Walter, this is Frank, your mobile notary, just making sure 7 p.m. is still good. I'll have my stamp and ID scanner ready. See you soon. Tidy, polite, right on time. I wrote, Frank Notary, next to today's entry and circled it. I drew a little arrow pointing to the word scanner. People forget that paper has a life of its own. Once you write something down, it stays written, but not always where you think. My fingers found the watch buckle. I turned the face over. The back had a tiny scratch from a winter about 20 years back. A cold morning carry in a bag of rock salt. My father's initials were there, a faint ghost TRM. He gave it to me when I turned 30, and he said, Time's not a river, Art. It's a workshop. You get to decide what you make in it. I didn't get what he meant back then. I get it now. Sometimes the thing you make is a boundary. I took a breath that felt like the first one I'd taken all night. In the closet, behind the folded blanket, the file drawer slid open easy on its runners. Inside was a set of duplicates I kept, not because I was paranoid, but because it was a habit. Birth certificates, tax papers, the loan note from when Leo needed the down payment to buy this place, and the trust deed showing a private loan in my name, all quiet and legal, humming like a fridge in the hall. I didn't pull them out. Not tonight. I just let my eyes touch their labels, like a blind man reading a prayer he knows by heart. Some men fight with their mouths. I learned a long time ago to fight with my calendar. I closed the drawer and went back to the desk. The manila folder was sitting there like a test. I opened it again and read every single line. I put a little dot in the margin where a phrase got a little too close to a cliff. I looked for the hidden switch in the words, the place where one little word could turn a life upside down. I had been a factory foreman for 32 years. You learn to read blueprints. You learn that a beam that's off by an inch doesn't break on the first day. It breaks on day 932. Footsteps in the hall. A soft knock. Amelia, her voice sweet as honey. Walter? We can go over these together if you want. Sometimes it helps to have support. I'll be out in a minute, I said. Of course, she replied. Her words floated, then fell. I stood up, and for the first time since those first words in the living room, I let myself look in the mirror over the dresser. The man looking back had weather in his face. His eyes were the color of Lake Michigan under winter clouds. He didn't look helpless. He looked like a man taking inventory. When I went back to the dining room, the table was set up like a little get-together. The folder was in the middle, the pens were lined up, and a little bowl of peppermints was pushed to the side. Leo sat up straight, his hands folded, like he was getting ready to make a presentation at work. Amelia had a legal pad open to a fresh page with "Next Steps" written at the top in neat letters. Shall we get started? She chirped. I pulled out a chair and sat down. I put my watch on the table by the peppermints and folded my hands next to it. Let's read together, I said, line by line. It took about 15 minutes to find the first loose nail. This part, I said, tapping it, gives durable power to both of you, jointly and separately. Amelia's face lit up. She knew that phrase. It just means we can act if one of us isn't around. It means, I said, either one of you can act all on your own. She blinked once. The pen in her hand stopped its little tappy-tap dance. Leo swallowed. Why is that a problem? He asked. It's not if you trust the people doing the acting to be on the same page, I said. But married couples have their own rhythms. People get tired. I let the sentences hang in the air, light as a feather. And this part makes arguments easier, not harder. Are you saying we? Amelia cut herself off. She smiled again, a practiced one. We can just cross that out. A lesson my dad taught me when I was 8. People show you their hands when you talk about the weather. They show you their hearts when you talk about time. But they show you their plans when you talk about paper. We kept going. Another part about managing my mail. Another one given permission to pull money out of special accounts for elder care costs. That one made my mouth go dry because special doesn't mean my accounts. It means whatever we say out loud while a notary nods along. Frank's here, Leo said all of a sudden, checking his phone. He's early. Bring him in, I said, cheerful as a Sunday morning. The more witnesses, the better. Walter, Amelia whispered, a warning wrapped in silk. I smiled. Witnesses, I repeated, not signatures. Frank, the notary, smelled a little like wintergreen gum and printer toner. He was maybe 45, with a friendly beard and a blue stamp in a zippered pouch that stuck out like a secret. Evening, he said brightly. We'll get this done for you real quick. He looked at me. You must be Walter. That's me, I said. He opened his case and set out his gear, stamp, notebook, ID scanner. It hummed to life with a clean, eager sound, like it had been waiting all day for my driver's license. He adjusted his glasses and opened his book to a fresh page. All right, he said, rubbing his hands together like he was getting ready to start a cookout. Who's signing what? Amelia started to talk. I raised my hand just a little. The kind of little move you learn from raising a boy. You signal without making a big deal. And sometimes that little move works better than yelling. Before we sign anything, I said, we read it. I'm old-fashioned. Totally, Frank said, not bothered at all. We do things the right way. We read again, out loud this time. The room changed when the words left the page and went into the air. They went from lines of ink to real definitions. They got heavier. Ink from a notary is forever. Words you say aren't. Somewhere in the middle, the truth just lays down and goes to sleep. When we got to the quitclaim, Leo cleared his throat. Dad, I won't be signing this tonight, I said. Amelia flinched. Why? Because I won't be moving on Monday, I said, and didn't apologize for being rude. Because you scheduled a notary before you even talked to me. Because I poured the foundation for this house with Leo when he was still full of hope. Because your plan is clean, but it's not kind. Because I read it. And I tapped the margin with my finger. And because place isn't something you get to decide for me. Frank's eyes jumped between our faces. He had the decency to just freeze up. Dad, Leo started, his voice low and careful. We're trying to help. I know, I said. And help comes in all sorts of shapes. Tonight it's gonna look like this. You'll leave the folder with me. Frank won't stamp a thing. You'll think about the word special and what it would feel like if someone you loved decided your life without a skin. And I will sleep in my room in this house this week. I just let those last two words hang in the air. We can try again when this conversation starts with the truth. Amelia pushed her chair back from the table and stood up. The chair screeched a little bit on the floor. It was a small, sharp sound. This is exactly the kind of manipulation. She started. It's a boundary, I said, not being unkind. Those are the lines families draw. That's right. Frank coughed into his hand and quietly zipped up his case. I can, reschedule, he mumbled. No fee. Happens all the time. Thank you, I said. Write your number on that legal pad, please. He did. A simple thing. A new line on a piece of paper. A seed, too. Amelia left the room. I heard the fridge door open then close. Ice rattled in a glass. Leo just stared at the quitclaim form like it had personally turned on him. I don't want a war, he said. Neither do I replied. I just want respect. It's a lot cheaper. We sat there for a bit. Two men in a dining room lit by a lamp that was older than his marriage. Our shoulders were hunched over a table that had belonged to my father before me. My watch ticked next to the peppermint candies. Dad, he said softly, you make it hard to know how to take care of you. You take care of me by not talking from me, I said. You take care of me by a skin before you decide. You take care of me by remembering that a man's worth isn't measured by his rent or how loud he is, or how fast he can get up the stairs. He looked at his hands. They were good hands. He'd built a deck with those hands. Held Helen's hand with them when she was dyin', and he was only 24 and scared to death. Hands don't become cruel on their own. They just follow the orders fear gives them. Okay, he said, his voice rough. We'll pause. Good, I said. Pausing is the adult thing to do. Frank slipped out. The front door clicked, a sound a notary makes when he leaves a room without stamping anything. Quiet, invisible, complete. I picked up my watch and strapped it back on my wrist. I closed the folder. We'll pick this up tomorrow, I said, getting up. I'm going to bed. I took the folder with me, past the staircase photos, past the creek on the third step, past the map of Lake Erie. In my room, I set it on the desk, slid my green notebook on top, and laid my watch on the pile like a paperweight from a different century. Then I turned off the light. The room held its breath. Outside, a neighbor's sprinkler ticked like a cheap clock, stitching the darkness with water. I sat on the edge of the bed and just let the stillness be my answer to the night's rehearsal. Before I went to sleep, I did one little thing. It's the kind of thing nobody pays attention to in stories until the end, when they realize it was the whole thing that made it happen. I opened the drawer, took out an envelope with a name written in my block letters on it, Commonwealth title, and placed it under the folder. A simple move, a quiet hook dropped deep in the water. Tomorrow, the past would come knockin'. Tonight, I chose to hear it, and I chose to be ready when it opened the door. The night after they tried to wipe me out, I didn't get any sleep. I just sat there in the dark, listening to the house breathe like it was still on my side. The hum of the fridge was steady in the distance. The pipes clicked as the temperature changed, and every sound felt like a friend who had stayed when my own family had turned against me. I stared at the ceiling until dawn painted the edges of the curtains, and in that gray light, a memory came back like a guest you didn't ask for. I remembered Leo when he was 5 years old, standing at the end of our gravel driveway with a baseball glove that was way too big for his hand. He'd wave it in the air like a flag, begging me to play catch the second I pulled up from work. My back would ache. My hands would still smell like metal and oil from the factory. But I'd always give him another chance. That word was his song. Again, Dad? Again. And I'd give it to him even when I had nothing left. Now, 3 decades later, my son had sat across from me with a folder meant to erase me. And all I could hear was that little boy's voice. It broke me in ways I didn't show, and hardened me in ways they couldn't see. When the morning came, I buttoned up a clean shirt and walked into the kitchen, my cane tapping on the floor. Amelia looked up with that fake smile that never got to her eyes. "Morning, Walter," she said brightly, like a store clerk saying hi to a customer. Leo sat at the table with his spoon hanging over his cereal, his eyes heavy with something he didn't want to say. I poured myself coffee without a skin, let the silence say more than any words, and sat down. We ate like strangers who had forgotten they once shared the same blood. Halfway through, I set my mug down and said, like it was no big deal, "I kept the loan from when you bought this house." Leo blinked. Amelia's smile faded. "What loan?" she asked, a little too fast. "The one for the down payment," I said. "You two didn't have enough saved. I put in 40% to make sure you'd get the loan. Paper doesn't get old like people do. It stays fresh." Leo shifted in his chair. Amelia pressed her lips together. They didn't say anything, but the quiet told me everything I needed to know. They had forgotten the seed I planted years ago, but the soil had kept it alive. After breakfast, I walked out to the backyard. The grass was wet with dew, the air was crisp, and the stump of the oak tree from last year's storm still stood there like a gravestone. I sat on the bench beside it and closed my eyes. From that spot, I could hear Helen's voice again, soft and steady. She used to sit there in her bathrobe with a book in her lap and tell me, "Walter, you've got to teach Leo patience. He wants everything too fast." I'd just laugh and say, "That's youth. Let him run." And she'd answer, "One day he'll forget to stop running." That's when he'll need you the most. I whispered into the empty yard. You were right, Helen. He forgot. But he's gonna learn. Not from me yellin', but from the truth. When I walked back inside, I caught Amelia on the phone. She was whisperin', her voice polite but sharp. Yes, Friday works. No, he hasn't signed yet, but he'll have everything ready. Her eyes got wide when she saw me. Just Bill. She stammered when I asked about the truck. But Bill didn't work on Fridays, and she knew I knew that. They were already moving the pieces, planning to list the house and shove me into a part of the world I hadn't chosen. I didn't need to hear the whole conversation. I just needed to hear her mess up. That was enough. I went back to my room, opened my green notebook with, "After Helen," written on the cover, and added today's notes. They have already called about Friday. They think I will sign. They do not know about the loan. They do not know what patience looks like when it's been sharpened. I underlined the word, patience, twice. Then I closed the notebook and took the walk I knew was important. At the bank, the teller recognized me. "Mr. Sterling, still keepin' everything in order?" she asked cheerfully. "Always," I replied. I asked her to confirm the loan file, to update the mailing address, and to print out the current record of who owned the place. Everything was still there. My name hadn't moved an inch. As I left, I felt like Helen used to feel when she finished a puzzle, putting the last piece in place. That loan was my piece, hidden but can't be replaced. On the walk back, old Mrs. Petrov from next door waved me over. She squinted her eyes and whispered, "Walter, I heard Amelia yesterday. Something about leased in your house? Is that true, listing?" The words hit me harder than place or support. Listing wasn't about caring. It was about money. I thanked her, and another piece clicked into place. That evening, we sat down at the dinner table. Leo poked at his food. Amelia forced a conversation about the weather and errands, pretending nothing had happened. I just let them talk, then said only one thing. "You should be careful what your neighbors hear." Amelia dropped her fork. Leo looked at me, then quickly looked away. That was all I needed. They knew I knew, and they didn't know how much more I had hidden away. Later that night, back in my room, I set the manila folder on my desk, put the notebook on top, and listened to the clock tick towards midnight. The house creaked, sighed, and whispered like it remembered who had built it. I whispered into the dark. "They think they're holding the pen. But I built the table it's resting on." And as I turned off the light, I slid one envelope from my drawer, the one marked Commonwealth Title, in my own handwritten, and tucked it under their folder. It was a quiet move, invisible to anyone but me. But it felt like setting a trap in deep water. They believed I had no power, but they had no idea the very ground they stood on still had my name on it. The next morning started with the sound of Leo's footsteps above me, slow and heavy, like even the floorboards of the house had started to moan under the weight of what he was carrying. I just lay there in my room, staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling paint, letting the rhythm of those footsteps set the pace of my thoughts. Helen used to say I could think circles around anyone when I stayed quiet long enough. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was just that being quiet gives a man room to remember. And remembering is what I did. When Leo was in high school, he came to me with a panicked look on his face because he had failed his driver's test the first time. He told me he was too embarrassed to tell his friends, too scared to face them at school. I sat him down in the workshop, handed him a soda, and said, "Son, failure only hurts when you hide it. Once you look it in the eye, it loses its power." He didn't like that answer back then, but he still took the test again the next week and passed. Now, years later, he was sitting in the same house, trying to hide me away like a failure he couldn't stand to face. It almost made me laugh. Almost. I got up, buttoned my shirt, and slipped my notebook into the inside pocket of my jacket. I didn't write anything yet. I just wanted it close to my chest like a shield. At the kitchen table, Amelia was already drinking her tea, flipping through a glossy magazine. She smiled too easy when she saw me, a show without a rehearsal this time. "Mornin', Walter," she said. I just nodded, poured my coffee, and sat down across from her. Leo came in a minute later, his tie all crooked, his jaw freshly shaved. He looked at me like he was waitin' for a fight that never came. I just let him wait. Silence is better than yellin'. It teaches faster. He cleared his throat, played with his phone, and finally said, Dad, we should probably reschedule the notary for later this week. Last night wasn't productive. Productive? I repeated, rolling the words slowly off my tongue. That's a good way to describe it. Amelia gave Leo a quick look, the kind couples give each other when they're trying to stay on the same page. We just want to make sure things are in order, Walter. For everyone's peace of mind. Peace of mind, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Whose mind? Either of them answered. Leo adjusted his tie again. Amelia flipped another page, her eyes never quite meeting mine. I let them sit in the quiet until my cup was empty. Then I stood up and took it to the sink. Got some errands to run today, I said. They didn't ask what kind. That was their first mistake. I walked into town slowly, my cane tappin', not because I needed the help so bad, but because I wanted to look the part. They expected the faded old man, the weak one, the burden. You learn things when people think you're too old or too tired to matter. They forget you can still listen. At the corner bakery, I overheard two men talking about property values going up near the freeway. At the post office, a clerk asked me if I was finally moving into Silver Pines, the very same place Amelia had mentioned. I smiled a little and told her, No, not yet. Rumors, it seemed, were already making the rounds. My family had a head start on writing me out of my own story. They just didn't know I had already sharpened my pencil. By mid-morning, I got to my younger brother Marcus's law office. The sign out front was worn from the weather, but you could still read it. Marcus Sterling and Associates, attorneys at law. He wasn't expecting me, but when I stepped inside, he got up from his desk, surprise in his eyes. Walter, well, I'll be. What brings you here? I sat across from him, put my cane gently by the chair. I need some advice, I said, and I need it to stay between us. His smile faded and he got serious. Of course. I told him everything. Not all at once, not in a rush, but carefully, like laying out tools on a workbench. The notary, the quitclaim deed, the place Amelia and Leo had already chosen, the call for Friday, the whispers about leasing the house. Through it all, Marcus listened with the patience of a man who's heard worse, but still feels the sting when it comes from family. When I finished, he leaned back and let out a breath. Walter, they have no idea what they're walking into. If the loan is still active, if your name is still on the deed, they can't do a damn thing without you. You're holding all the cards. I nodded slowly. I know, but knowing isn't enough. I want them to feel it. I want them to understand that trust isn't a signature you force out of someone. It's something you earn. And if they forgot that, then maybe it's time they learn it all over again. Marcus tapped his pen against the yellow legal pad. We can make this very uncomfortable for them without you lifting more than a finger. I'll write up a notice. It'll remind them that the loan is still there. That way, if they try to get a new loan or sell without your permission, the bank will shut them down cold. They'll get the message real quick. Good, I said, but don't send it yet. Let's wait until they think they've already won. His eyes flickered with a kind of admiration. You always were the patient one. Patience? I said, almost smiling. Patience isn't just waiting quietly, it's sharpening quietly. We shook hands before I left, and his grip felt like both a promise and family. On the walk home, I thought about Helen again. She used to say, Walter, you never raise your voice, you raise the stakes. I hadn't understood back then how true that was, how sometimes the quietest man at the table is the one who's writing the rules of the game. When I stepped through the front door, Leo and Amelia were in the living room, talking in hushed voices. They stopped when they saw me, their eyes shifting around like they were guilty kids. I didn't say a word. I just walked past them, my cane steady, and into my room. At my desk, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Met Marcus. He knows everything. We wait. They think silence means they win. They don't know silence can be a plan." That evening, Amelia knocked softly on my door. "Walter, do you have a minute?" Her voice had that polite edge that hides a knife. I opened the door. She was holding a casserole dish. "I made extra tonight. Thought you might like some." I looked at the dish, then at her. "Thank you," I said, tucking it. Our eyes met for just a moment longer than they needed to. She wanted to see if I'd show something, maybe fear, or thanks she could twist later. I gave her nothing. When I closed the door, I set the dish on the desk next to the folder, untouched. Food offered from guilt never sits well in the stomach. The house was quiet after dinner. Leo went to the workshop, Amelia to her phone calls. I walked the hallway slowly, my cane tapping on the wood floor, and stopped by the family pictures on the wall. There was Leo at 10, holding a model airplane we built together. There was Helen Logan at something from behind the camera. There I was, younger, holding a fishing pole with Leo sitting proudly next to me. I touched the frame lightly. "You were mine once," I whispered. As I went back to my room, I saw the faint outline of an envelope that had been pushed under my door. I picked it up. It was blank. Inside was a single piece of paper, with "Silver Pines Community Welcome Packet" printed on it. Someone had slid it under like it was a hotel brochure, like my life had already been booked for me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it. Then I folded it once, twice, and tucked it into the back of my notebook. Not because I was giving up, but because it was proof. Later, I heard Amelia on the phone again. Her voice carried through the thin walls. "Yes, Friday should be fine. He'll sign by then. Don't worry." She laughed softly. "He's too tired to fight." I smiled in the dark. They thought being tired meant losing. They didn't understand that being still can be a kind of power, the kind that waits for the right moment to strike with perfect aim. Before bed, I pulled the envelope marked Commonwealth title from my drawer one more time, put it next to the manila folder they'd given me, and looked at the two together. Their folder wanted to erase me. Mine wanted to remind them I couldn't be erased. The difference was almost like a poem. I lay down, hands folded on my chest, listening to the house settle into its bones. I thought of Helen, of her puzzles, of the patience she taught me without ever meaning to. And I whispered into the silence, "They think they've written the last line of my story. But I'm still holding the pen." And with that, the plan had started. Not with anger, not with noise, but with quiet, careful ink that would, in time, be louder than any voice in this house. The day after the welcome packet slid under my door, the air inside the house felt strange and still, like the quiet before a big storm you know is coming. I got up before sunrise, like I always do, my watch cold against my wrist, and let the quiet guide me. It wasn't fear that woke me up now. It was a plan. I brewed coffee slowly, listening to the drips sounding through the kitchen, letting its rhythm remind me of the factory floor when I was younger. I remembered Helen teasing me, saying I measured life by machines. Maybe she was right. Machines and patience, that was my job. That morning, patience was the machine I needed most. When Leo came downstairs, his hair still wet from the shower, he seemed almost rehearsed again, like every move was something Amelia had approved before he left the bedroom. He nodded at me carefully. "Mornin', Dad." "Mornin', Leo," I said. My voice was calm, but I watched his shoulders tense up anyway. He poured cereal into a bowl, avoided my eyes, and ate fast like a man who was gonna be late for a meeting. As he left for work, he said, "We'll talk tonight about arrangements." Arrangements. That word had the weight of a coffin lid. I just nodded and let him leave, my cane tapping softly on the tile as I walked to the back porch. The fall air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke from a neighbor's fireplace. It reminded me of bonfires Leo and I once built in the yard, piling the logs too high and Logan when sparks flew. He used to believe I could keep fire under control. Now he wanted to believe I couldn't even control myself. Amelia came out a little later, dressed all sharp like she was going somewhere important. She had her phone in one hand and her coffee in the other, smiling like the world outside these walls couldn't see through her show. She glanced at me sitting on the porch. "Walter, you should bundle up. It's getting cold." "I've lived through colder," I said, not moving. She tilted her head, trying to figure out if I meant the weather or something else. Then she turned away, mumbling something into her phone. That's when I decided it was time to take the first real step, not directly against them, but around them, planting seeds. Helen would have called it that. I left the house late in the morning and walked into town. I stopped first at the bakery. Mrs. Johnson, the owner, greeted me warmly. "Haven't seen you in a while. How's Leo treating you?" I smiled a little. "Like a guest in my own house," I said. Her eyebrows came together. "That doesn't sound right." I shrugged, letting the words hang in the air just long enough for them to sink into her mind. Then I bought a loaf of rye bread and left. Seeds don't need big speeches, just a little whisper of doubt in the right ear. Next, I went to the hardware store. Old Bill behind the counter looked up from the cash register. "Walter, you need more nails already?" "Not nails this time," I said. "Just some sandpaper for the desk in my room. Thought I'd smooth out the edges." He chuckled. "Always fixin' something, huh?" "Better to fix wood than family," I answered softly. His eyes flickered up at me. You could see the curiosity. I paid, thanked him, and left. Another seed, small but on purpose. By afternoon, I got to the little cafe where Marcus sometimes had lunch. He wasn't there yet, so I sat by the window and watched people walk by. The young ones moved fast, their faces glued to their phones, not paying attention to the world around them. The older ones walked more slowly, careful, carrying their years like a fragile glass. I didn't belong to the group. I was somewhere in between, slow in my body, but sharp in my head. When Marcus got there, he greeted me with the same warmth as always. "Walter, you're out and about again. Twice in 2 days, I'm gonna start thinking you actually like me." I smiled. "You were always the one who talked too much." We ordered sandwiches, and while we ate, I leaned in just a little. "Amelia and Leo already called someone. Friday. They think I'll sign by then." Marcus's jaw got tight. "And are you gonna?" I looked him in the eye. "No, but I want them to think I might, for now." He nodded, getting it right away. "So, you're letting them build their house of cards. And when the wind blows," I said, "I won't have to lift a finger." We talked a little longer, then I left him to his work. As I walked home, I passed by Mrs. Petrov again. She leaned over her fence, whispering, "Walter, I heard they've been making calls about Silver Pines. Is that true?" I gave her a tired smile. "People talk. Let 'em. The truth has a way of coming out." By the time I got home, Amelia was passing in the kitchen on her phone. She lowered her voice when she saw me, but not enough. "Yes, Friday. We'll have the paperwork ready. He's stubborn, but he'll give in." Then, louder, like she was trying to cover her tracks, she said, "Oh, hi, Walter. Just confirming with the plumber." "The plumber doesn't come on Fridays," I said quietly, and walked right past her. I didn't need to see her face to know the color had drained from it. That evening, Leo came home. He looked tired, worn out from numbers or people, or maybe by the silence he knew was waiting for him here. We ate dinner quietly. I let my fork scrape against the plate just enough to fill the silence. After we were done, I spoke for the first time. "You've been busy," I said. He froze. "What do you mean?" "Calls, plans." "Friday." His face got hard. "Dad, we're trying to do what's best for everyone. Don't make this harder." I looked at him, steady, calm. "Harder for who?" He didn't answer. He just pushed his plate away and stood up. Amelia followed him out of the room, whispering something fast. I stayed alone at the table and let the quiet settle around me like armor. Later that night, I sat at my desk and opened my notebook. I wrote, "Talk to neighbors. Seeds planted. They're already whisperin'. Amelia's nervous. Leo's defensive. Friday's comin'. They don't see the ground movin' under them. I closed the notebook and put it back in the folder. The house creaked as the wind picked up outside. In the distance, I could hear the faint sound of a church bell from across town. It reminded me of Helen, of the Sundays we spent together, of the way she believed time was a circle that always comes back around. I whispered to her memory. The circle's turnin', Helen. They don't see it, but it's already begun. And as I turned off the lamp, I knew the seeds I had scattered that day were already taking root. All I had to do now was wait for them to grow. The morning after the seeds were planted, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest that wasn't fear and wasn't being tired. It was something more like resolve. A man my age doesn't get out of bed without aches and pains. But that morning, the aches felt like armor. I got dressed slowly, buttoned my flannel shirt, slipped the notebook into my pocket, and stared for a minute at Helen's picture on the dresser. She had been gone for years, but her eyes still had a way of asking me silently. "And what are you gonna do today, Walter?" I answered her by picking up my cane and walking out the door before Leo or Amelia could corner me with their well-practiced words. The autumn air bit at my lungs, but I liked it. There are days you breathe just to stay alive, and days you breathe for a clear head. This was the second one. I walked toward the east side of town, past houses that had sprouted, for sale, signs in the last year, prices going up, people cashing out, families moving away. It hit me then that's exactly how Leo and Amelia saw me, as a house with value, something to sell off. Not a man, not a father, but an asset. The thought didn't sting, it just made me more sure of myself. It reminded me that I needed more than just papers and memories. I needed a real friend. Marcus was already helping on the legal side, but family can only do so much. I thought about who else might still be on my side, and one name came to my mind as natural as breath: Bill Collins. Bill and I had worked together for 30 years at the plant. He had the kind of steady hands that could measure steel down to the tiniest part, and the kind of loyalty that didn't go away even when the boss was yellin'. Years back, when his boy got into trouble with the law, I had spoken up for him with the union guy, said he was a good person. Bill is the kind of man who'll pay back every debt twice. I said that was true then, and I hoped it was true now. I found him at the VFW hall, a place that smelled like coffee that had been burnin' 4 hours and would polish older than half the men sittin' at the bar. Bill was leanin' back in a chair, his cap pulled low, sippin' a cup of black coffee. When he saw me, he grinned. "Walter, I'll be damned. Haven't seen you in months. Sit. Sit." I lowered myself into the chair across from him. The old boards creaked under my weight, and for a moment, we just looked at each other, two old-timers from the same time. "Bill," I said quietly, "I need a favor." His smile went away, and a serious look came over his face, the look of a man who knows favors between old friends are never small. "What's going on?" I told him everything. I didn't rush it. I laid it out piece by piece, like tightened bolts on a machine, until the shape of the problem showed itself. Leo's words, Amelia's folder, the notary, the Friday call, the Silver Pines packet, the loan, the whispers around town. Through it all, Bill listened, his jaw getting tight, his hand clenching the handle of his coffee mug. When I finished, he shook his head. "Jesus, Walter, your boy." I nodded. "My boy." He let out a long breath. "What do you need?" "I don't need fights," I said. "I don't need fists. I need eyes, ears, maybe a hand or two if it comes to it. They're trying to make me look weak. They don't know I still have roots." Bill leaned forward. "You've got me. Heck, you stood up for my family when nobody else would. This is nothing compared to that." I felt something tighten in my throat. Not sadness, but a reminder that being grateful still had a place in the world. I reached across the table and shook his hand. His grip was as strong as it had been when we worked next to each other on the line. That handshake was more than a promise. It was a quiet team-up. We spent the next hour talking through what might happen. Bill mentioned his cousin who worked at the county clerk's office, the same place where deeds and titles were filed. She can keep you updated if anyone tries to file something with your name, he said. Off the books. That would help, I said. And my nephew's in real estate, he added. If Amelia's been calling about leasing the place, he'll hear about it. That kind of gossip moves fast. It hit me then how little Amelia and Leo understood the world they lived in. They thought they could move quietly, but small towns don't keep secrets. Every phone call leaves an echo, every plan leaves a trail of crumbs. I just needed someone to sweep them into my notebook. By the time I left the VFW hall, the air felt lighter in my lungs. I wasn't walking back alone anymore. At home, Amelia was in the kitchen, her phone pressed tight to her ear. She glanced at me as I came in, then turned her back. Yes, Friday. He's stubborn, but we'll get him there. I promise. She caught herself, added quickly. No, just talking to the plumber. Thanks. The plumber again, I asked mildly, hinging up my jacket. She jumped a little. Yes, he's been hard to reach. I gave her a small smile. Funny, the pipes haven't leaked once. Then I walked past her, my cane steady, into the living room where Leo was sitting, scrawling on his phone. He looked up, guilty, like my being there was accusing him. Dad, he started. We just want what's best for. Who? I asked, the same question I'd asked before. This time I didn't wait for an answer. I left him sitting there with his mouth half open, his excuses half formed. In my room, I opened the notebook and wrote, Met Bill. We're a team. A handshake is stronger than ink. They don't know the walls have ears. Then I tucked the notebook back under the folder. That evening, as the sun went down and the shadows stretched long across the floorboards, I sat on the porch again. I listened to the cicadas buzz, the crickets chirp, the faint logan of kids playing down the street. For a second, it almost felt like the world was normal again. But inside these walls, the storm was brewing, and I wasn't alone in facing it anymore. After dinner, Leo tried again. He came up to me while I was washing my cup in the sink. Dad, we need to finish things. Amelia has been working so hard on this. You're making it. He stopped himself before saying, harder. I dried the cup, set it carefully on the rack, and looked at him. Leo, do you remember when you failed your driver's test? He blinked, caught off guard. What? You came home embarrassed, ready to hide it. I told you failure only hurts when you hide it. And you went back and passed the next week. Do you remember that? He frowned. I guess. Then remember this, too. Erasing me won't erase your shame. It'll just make it worse. One day you'll have to look in the mirror and see the man who tried to kick his own father out. That reflection doesn't go away, Leo. Not with any signature. His face turned red, his jaw clenched. You're twisting this. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm untwisting it. He left the room, mumbling under his breath. Amelia followed soon after, whispering sharp words to him as they went up the stairs. I didn't need to hear him. The sound of his footsteps getting farther away told me enough. When the house got quiet, I sat back down at my desk. I put my watch on the green notebook the way my father once put his hand on my shoulder. A reminder of time, of family, of what matters. I thought of Helen again, of the way she believed every little thing mattered. Walter, she used to say, people think storms ruin everything, but sometimes storms just show you which trees had roots strong enough to stay. I smiled a little in the dark. The storm was coming, but I had roots. And now I had a friend who remembered the debt I once paid and who would stand by me when the wind started to howl. When I finally closed my eyes, it wasn't to the sound of being alone, but to the echo of a handshake across a table, strong and steady, carrying me into the next day. The morning after I shook Bill's hand, I woke up with a different kind of weight on me. It wasn't the heavy feeling of being betrayed, or the quiet ache of a memory. It was the weight a craftsman feels when his tools are finally laid out in front of him. The feeling that the work can finally start. For weeks, maybe months, I had been the thing getting hit, taking every blow in silence. That morning, I knew I was also the hammer. I sat at my desk, opened my green notebook, and read over the lines I had written the night before. Met Bill. We're a team. Handshake is stronger than ink. My fingers traced the words like a man tracking the grooves in a piece of wood he's about to carve. Then I put the notebook down and pulled open the drawer with my files. The crisp edges of the paper, the neat labels in my own handwriting, the smell of old folders, they felt more reliable than any weapon I had ever held. I slipped the folder marked Deed into a leather bag along with the loan papers and a copy of Helen's will. Not because I planned on showing them to anyone, but because I was gonna protect them. Papers, like a knife, are useless if you just leave them to rust. I tucked the bag under my jacket, grabbed my cane, and stepped out into the cool air. Amelia was at the kitchen counter with her phone, stirring sugar into her coffee. She raised her eyebrows when she saw me, all dressed up, jacket zipped, and shoes clean. Going somewhere, Walter? Errands, I said the same word as before. Her lips got tight. She wanted to ask more, but she didn't. She had started to learn that my silences weren't empty, they were loaded. I walked into town again, slow but steady, letting every tap of my cane remind me that being weak is sometimes the best disguise. The first stop was Marcus's office. When he saw the bag, his eyes got sharp. Walter, he said, closing the door behind me. You look like a man about to file a lawsuit. Not yet, I answered. But I need you to keep these safe. Quiet. He opened the bag, pulled the folders out one by one, his lawyer's eyes checking the stamps, the signatures, the notary marks from years ago. These are gold, he said softly. Anyone who tries to do something with that house, this loan shuts him down cold. And Helen's will names you the executor. They'd have to crawl through broken glass to undo this. Good, I said. Keep them out of sight. Make copies if you have to, but don't say a word. Marcus looked at me, his lips forming a small smile. Walter, you're not just getting through this. You're setting up the whole game. I didn't smile back. I learned from Helen. You never play a game until you know the whole puzzle. We sat for a while talking about all the things that could happen. What if Amelia and Leo tried to file papers behind my back? What if they put pressure on a notary again? What if they tried to move money from the bank account I had stupidly let Leo manage after Helen passed? For every what if, Marcus gave me an answer. Court orders, legal notices, account freezes. Every move they thought they could make, I had a counter for it now. When I left his office, I felt the same kind of steady I had felt 30 years ago, walking out of the plant after I shut down a broken machine. Back then, I knew people's lives depended on me catching what others missed. Now it was my own dignity, my home, my purpose. On the way home, I stopped at the post office. Mornin', Walter, the clerk said. Want me to forward your mail to Silver Pines yet? She meant it as a joke, but her smile went away when she saw my face. Not today, I said quietly. Keep everything here, and if anyone asks about my new address, you call me first. She nodded, embarrassed. Of course. Another seed planted. When I got back, Amelia was in the living room, flipping through papers way too fast when she heard my cane. She slid them into a folder, smiled a thin smile. You've been busy, she said. Better to be busy than useless, I replied. I saw her cheek twitch, the way her smile looked forced. Words, when they're calm, cut deeper than yelling. That evening, Leo came home late. His tie was loose, his eyes were bloodshot. He tried to act normal, but normal doesn't come easy to men who feel guilty. We sat at the table in silence until he cleared his throat. Dad, he said, we need to move on this. Amelia's been stressed. I've been stressed. We're not trying to hurt you. We just can't keep living like this. I set down my fork. Like what? Like there's no order, no plan. There is a plan, I said evenly. It's just not yours. He blinked. What do you mean? I didn't answer. I just let the silence hang there until he pushed his chair back and stood up. Amelia rushed after him, whispering sharp things I couldn't hear. Or maybe I could have if I cared, but I didn't. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the leather bag again. I laid out the folders, not to study 'em, but to remind myself of what I was carrying. Paper might seem weak, but paper brought down whole countries. A deed, a loan, a will. These were my quiet weapons. I wrote in the notebook. Marcus holds the real papers. Seeds at the post office. Amelia's nervous. Leo's crackin'. Paper is stronger than fists. Then I turned off the lamp and listened to the house breathe. The next day, Bill called. Walter, my cousin at the clerk's office, says Amelia's been poking around, asking about how fast titles can be transferred. She doesn't know your loan is there. Good, I said. Let her think the ground is solid. And my nephew heard from another real estate guy. They've been asking about how fast a house can be sold. I chuckled a little. They're running full speed toward a wall. Bill laughed, then got serious. You're not in this alone, Walter. Remember that. I know, I said. And I did. Back at home, Amelia tried a new trick. She knocked on my door in the afternoon, carrying a tray with tea. Walter, you must be tired. I made chamomile. It helps with stress. I looked at the cup, steaming gently, and then at her. You drink it, I said. Her smile went away. She set the tray down and left without another word. That evening, Leo tried again. He stood in the doorway of my room, looking like a boy about to confess to break in a window. Dad, why are you fighting us? I'm not fighting, I said. I'm remembering. Remembering what? That this house was built on my back. That trust isn't paperwork. That what I stand for isn't something you get to erase. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at the floor. We just thought it'd be easier. Easier? I repeated. For who? He didn't answer. He just left. That night, I slipped the Commonwealth title envelope from my drawer again and put it next to the leather bag. My watch ticked beside it, steady as a heartbeat. I thought of Helen, of her puzzles, of her patience. I thought of Bill, of Marcus, of the seeds planted in town. I whispered into the dark. They think they've got me cornered. They don't see I've already built the door. And with that, I knew the weapons were ready. Not guns, not fists, but the quiet strength of paper, friends, and patience. The storm was closer now, and when it broke, it wouldn't be me who was shaken. The first sign that things were turning didn't come with yelling or slammed doors, or even another set of neat papers. It came with the look on Leo's face when he answered his phone one Thursday morning, standing at the bottom of the stairs in his pressed shirt and clean shoes. His voice was careful, sharp, and then it broke with 3 words that told me more than he meant to. Denied. How? Denied. I sat at the table with my coffee getting cold in front of me, pretending to read the paper while my ears caught every single word. Leo's jaw got tight, his free hand clenching and unclenching like he could squeeze the word, denied, into going away. Amelia hovered nearby, her lips pressed into a hard line, watching him the way a card player watches her partner quit too soon. When he hung up, the silence that followed was thicker than any argument we had ever had. Everything all right? I asked softly, not looking up from the paper. It's nothing. Leo snapped too fast. Must be something, I said, folding the paper and putting it down. Nothing has a way of making men sweat. His eyes flashed at me, then looked away. Amelia put a hand on his arm, whispering something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. I already knew what that call was about. The bank. The loan Marcus had quietly kept alive, had done its job. My son, who thought he could get rid of me with a signature, had just found out that the ground under his feet wasn't solid after all. The rest of the day went by with a nervous quiet. Leo left for work later than usual, mumbling about meetings while Amelia stayed glued to her phone, passing the kitchen floor until she wore a faint path into it. I just let them sit there. Patience is its own kind of pressure. You don't need to yell when time and truth are squeezing you. That evening, Leo came home earlier than usual. He didn't sit in the living room like he normally did, scrawling on his phone to avoid talking. Instead, he came straight to my room. He stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, his eyes darting from my cane to the desk where the notebooks sat. "Dad," he said finally, "we need to talk." I looked up slowly. "We've been talking, Leo. You just haven't been listening." His jaw clenched. "The bank said there's a loan from you from years ago. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you never asked," I said. He stepped inside, his voice getting louder. "You made it impossible for us to move forward. Do you realize what you've done?" I got up carefully from the chair, leaning on my cane, looking him right in the eye. The players: Arthur Reed, Walter Sterling, Caleb Leo, Mara Amelia, Ruth Helen, Daniel Marcus, Mrs. Kravitz, Mrs. Petrov, Frank Lawson, Bill Collins, Mrs. Jensen, Mrs. Johnson, Tom Bill, Henry Wallace, George Taylor, H.J.R., Arthur's father, T.R.M., Walter's father. "What I've done," I said calmly, "is protect what's mine. What your mother and I built. What you forgot." Amelia showed up behind him, her face tight with frustration. "Walter, this isn't fair. We've been trying to set things up for you, to make sure you're taken care of, and you're messing it all up." I almost laughed. "Taken care of? Is that what you call it? Setting up a notary behind my back, sliding Silver Pines brochures under my door? That's not care. That's just what's easy for you." Leo looked away, either ashamed or mad. I couldn't tell which. Amelia, though, kept her eyes on mine with a kind of cold stubbornness. "You can't stay here forever, Walter. One way or another, this house is gonna be ours. That loan won't last." I tapped the floor once with my cane, slow and on purpose. "Long enough," I said. She turned around fast, dragging Leo with her, whispering furiously as they went up the stairs. I sat back down, opened the notebook, and wrote. First crack shows. They know the loan is real. Fear in their voices, anger in Amelia's eyes. The storm is getting closer. The next morning, I took a walk to the corner store. As I walked through the aisles, I noticed two neighbors whispering near the canned goods. They stopped when I passed, but not before I heard my name. Walter's son tried to sell the house. One mumbled. Bank shut it down. The other one clucked her tongue. Shameful. Poor Walter. I didn't say anything to them. Seeds you plant don't need water from the gardener. Gossip grows all on its own. By the time I got to the cash register, Mrs. Johnson behind the counter was already shaking her head at me with sympathy. Families, she said softly. Sometimes they forget who kept them on their feet. On the way home, I stopped at Bill's place. He was sitting on his porch, smoking his pipe, his eyes as sharp as ever. Heard the bank stopped him, he said with a grin. I sat down next to him, letting the smoke curl between us. First bit of pressure, I said. He nodded. They'll be running around now. Watch 'em. People show their real selves when the ground starts to shake. He was right. That evening, their real selves started to show. Leo came home all jumpy, passing the living room. Amelia cornered him, his sin in low tones that floated up the stairs to my room. Words like embarrassment, neighbors, and stupid loan floated through the air. At one point, Leo's voice cracked. What do you want me to do, Amelia? He's my father. The silence that followed was sharper than any yelling. When Amelia finally replied, her voice was low and cold. Not for long. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of those words sink in. Not for long. They thought they were pushing me out. They didn't realize they were pushing themselves into a corner. Later that night, I picked up the phone and called Marcus. They know about the loan, I said. Good, he replied. Let them think about it. They'll fight harder now. I warned. Then we'll hold on tighter, he said simply. I hung up, put the phone down, and went back to my desk. I opened Helen's old Bible that I kept tucked in the drawer, flipped to a page she had once underlined. The stone the builders threw away has become the most important part, I whispered into the quiet. You see, Helen? They tried to erase me, but it's me holding the house together. The next day, Amelia tried a new trick. She came to my door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Walter, we were thinking, maybe we rush things. Maybe we can talk about arrangements that feel more comfortable. I looked at her steadily. Comfort isn't what you're after, Amelia. Control is. Her smile went away. Why do you always assume the worst? Because you've shown me, I said. Again and again. She left quickly after that, but the worry in her eyes stayed like a shadow. That evening, Leo came into my room alone. He sat on the edge of the chair, rubbing his hands together. Dad, he said, his voice low. I didn't know about the notary until Amelia set it up. I swear. I didn't stop it. That's on me. I looked at him for a long time. For a moment I saw the boy with the glove that was too big for him, waiting at the end of the driveway. Leo, I said quietly. You've forgotten what being loyal looks like. And once a man forgets that, it's hard to remember again. He put his head in his hands. I don't know what to do. Then do nothing, I said. Sometimes that's the smartest choice. He left without another word. When the house got quiet again, I sat back at my desk, pulled the Commonwealth title envelope from the drawer, and put it next to the notebook. My watch ticked beside them, steady as a heartbeat. I wrote one last line for the night. The first crack has shown up. Tomorrow the pressure gets worse. And I knew then that the storm had started to howl and that it wouldn't be me left shaken when it finally broke. The morning after Leo's voice cracked on the phone with the bank, the air in the house had a heavy feeling that didn't belong to me anymore. It was theirs. I could hear it in the way Amelia's heels clicked louder on the wood floor. In the way Leo shuffled papers that didn't need shuffling, the way their whispers stopped the second my cane tapped across the floor. Fear makes a house louder. That was my first sign that the pressure was working. I poured myself coffee and sat at the table. The steam rose in front of me, curling like smoke signals. Leo came down the stairs with his tie half tied, his eyes dark. He mumbled a "Good morning," without looking at me, then played with his phone like he was waiting for a magic text that would undo the call from yesterday. Amelia followed right behind, perfect as always, her phone already at her ear. She gave me a smile that looked more like a twisted face, and then turned her back, whispering fast into the phone. I didn't need to hear every word. It was enough to catch, liquidate, and timeline before she stepped into the hallway. I sipped my coffee and let the silence fill the room until Leo finally spoke. Dad, he said, his voice low. You don't understand what you've done. This loan ties everything up. I looked at him steadily. I understand perfectly. That's why I did it. His eyes got smaller, but he didn't say anything back. He just grabbed his briefcase and left, Amelia right on his heels. The door closed behind them harder than it needed to. I stayed at the table long after they left, staring at the maple coaster under my mug. I had carved it years ago from a branch that had fallen, sanding it smooth while Helen read on the porch. She had laughed then, saying, You even give broken things a new purpose. That memory made me feel strong. Later that morning, I stepped outside, letting the crisp air clear my lungs. The neighbor across the street, George Taylor, waved me over. He was a quiet man, usually too busy with his garden to care about gossip. But that day, his face was tight with something he hadn't said. Walter, he began, lowering his voice, even though no one else was near. I don't like to get involved, but I overheard Leo at the hardware store yesterday. He was talking to the clerk about getting a new loan. Sounded like he was upset. Said your name more than once. I looked at George for a moment. He was the kind of man who was careful with his words, not one to make a big deal out of nothing. And what did he say exactly? he said. My father's making this impossible. He won't let go. George shifted uncomfortably. Look, I don't know what's going on in your house, but people are talking. Some say Leo's trying to push you out. Others say you're the one holding him hostage. I figured you should know. I nodded slowly. Thank you, George. Talking is what towns do best. As I walked back, I thought about how fast the story had started to get around. Rumors are like kindling. Once the spark catches, the fire starts to live on its own. But unlike fire, rumors don't just destroy. They also show you things. They make people look closer. And sometimes they make people choose a side. By the time I got home, Bill had already called. Walter, he said, his voice low but steady. My cousin at the clerk's office told me Amelia tried to ask for a copy of the deed. She was mad when they told her she couldn't get it without you. She left in a huff. The words getting around. Good, I said. Let 'em chase ghosts. That afternoon, Amelia cornered me in the kitchen. Her smile was fake, her voice falsely sweet. Walter, the neighbors seem worried. Mrs. Johnson at the bakery asked me if everything was all right. Did you say something? I stirred sugar into my tea slowly. I said the truth, Amelia. People can decide what to do with it. Her eyes flashed. You're making us look like the bad guys. I looked at her calmly. I don't have to make you look like anything. People see for themselves. She opened her mouth to argue, but closed it again, pressing her lips together tight. Then she stormed out, her heels snapping against the floor like gunshots. That evening, as the sun went down, Leo came into my room. He didn't sit. He just stood there shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Dad, this is getting out of control. Everyone's talking. Amelia is furious. You need to stop. Stop what? I asked softly. Stop making us the bad guys. I leaned on my cane, looking him in the eyes. You don't become the bad guy because of what I say, Leo. You become the bad guy because of what you do. He flinched, and for a moment I saw the boy he had once been, ashamed after breaking a neighbor's window with a baseball. Back then, he had come to me crying, begging me to fix it. I had told him the only way to fix it was to go to the neighbor's door himself, admit his mistake, and offer to pay. That lesson had stayed with him for years, but somewhere along the way, he had stopped knocking. He left without another word. That night I wrote in my notebook. Neighbors whispering. George is no longer quiet. Clerk said Amelia was in a panic. Leo's cracking. They can't control the story anymore. The next day, the whispers turned into people talking openly. At the post office, 2 women I barely knew came up to me. Walter, is it true your son's trying to sell your house right from under you? One asked. Her voice wasn't mean. It was sympathetic, almost protective. I didn't say yes, didn't say no. I just said, sons forget. Sometimes fathers remember. They nodded seriously, their eyes soft with pity, and walked away. By the time I got home, I knew the town wasn't on the sidelines anymore. They were watching. And in a small town, being watched is sometimes worse than being judged. That evening, as I sat on the porch with my cane resting against my leg, George came by again. He stood at the bottom of the steps, clearing his throat. Walter, if you ever need someone to stand up for you about the loan, about the house, I'll be there for you. People trust me. They know I don't talk unless it's important. I looked at him, surprised. George had always been neutral, keeping his nose in his garden, his ears out of trouble. But now he had crossed the line. Thank you, George, I said. I might take you up on that. That night I sat at my desk, the leather bag open, the papers spread out before me like parts of a puzzle. My watch ticked steadily, a reminder that time itself was on my side. I wrote in the notebook. George crossed the line. The town sees. Rumors are no longer my job to spread. They're alive on their own. Amelia and Leo think they can control the house, but the house has already chosen its witness. I closed the notebook, turned off the lamp, and let the darkness settle. The storm was almost here, and it wasn't just my storm anymore. It was theirs too. And when the wind shifted, it shifted in my favor. The morning it all came to a head was gray. The kind of gray that seeps into the walls, into the bones of the house, into the silence between people. I woke up before dawn, as always, sitting on the edge of my bed with the watch ticking faintly against my wrist, the green notebook open in front of me. I wrote one sentence. Today, something will break and it won't be me. Then I closed it, slipped it into my jacket, and listened to the stillness of a house about to tear itself apart. Downstairs, Amelia was already passing, phone in hand. Her voice was sharp, brittle, just loud enough for me to hear. Yes, I know, but the loan can't last forever. He's old. He'll give in. He has to. Just hold the buyer a little longer. Her words stopped when she saw me at the bottom of the stairs. She smiled too quickly, covering the phone. Mornin', Walter. Coffee's on the counter. Thank you, I said evenly, walking past her to pour a cup. The kitchen felt smaller with her in it, her perfume mixing with the bitter smell of panic she tried so hard to hide. Leo came down moments later, his face pale, tie knotted too tight. He avoided my eyes, mumbling something about a meeting. But he didn't leave. He stayed in the doorway, shifting from foot to foot like he was waiting for permission for Amelia to speak. What's the matter, son? I asked softly. He looked up, startled, his mouth opened, then closed. Finally, he said, the bank called again. They won't move forward. Not with the loan. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence do most of the talking. Paper, I said at last, has more patience than people. That's what I've always told you. He flinched like the words themselves were heavy. Amelia jumped in, her voice sharp. Walter, this has gone far enough. You're embarrassing us. The neighbors are talking. The bank is treating us like idiots. And all because you won't sign one piece of paper. I set my cup down gently. One piece of paper built this house. One piece of paper kept you afloat when you couldn't afford the down payment. And one piece of paper is keeping me here now. If you think paper doesn't matter, Amelia, then you've never really dealt with the consequences. Her face got red. Her eyes got smaller, but before she could answer, the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the house like a gavel. Leo hurried to answer it. And when the door swung open, there stood Bill, solid as the oak he'd once cut for his porch beams. Next to him was George Taylor, hat in hand, his eyes steady. Behind them, a man in a gray suit I knew from the bank was holding a folder. Mornin', Bill said, stepping inside without waiting to be asked. Thought we should all sit down. Amelia stiffened. What is this? George spoke quietly, but his words were sharp. It's the truth, Amelia. Folks around town deserve to know it, and so does the bank. Walter has every right to be here. More right than you've given him credit for. The banker cleared his throat, opening his folder. Mr. Sterling's loan is real and can be enforced. Until it's fixed, no sale or new loan can happen. Legally, the property can't be given to anyone else without his signature, and based on our records, he has no plan to give it. Leo's shoulders slumped like someone had pulled the strings holding him up. Amelia's face went white, then red. You can't just show up here and embarrass us in our own home, she hissed. I leaned on my cane, watching them both fall apart. I didn't ask them to come. The truth has a way of walking through the door all on its own. Leo looked at me, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years. Fear, yes, but also a light going on. A realization of the father who had once helped him through bad times, the man he had thought wasn't so smart. Dad, he began, but his voice broke. I raised a hand gently. Don't. You said I had no purpose in this house anymore. But it seems the house disagrees. Amelia turned on him, her anger spilling out. This is your fault, Leo. You said it would be easy. You said he'd give in, and now look, everyone's looking at us. Her words echoed down the hall, sharp and mean. The kind of words that stay with you long after they're said. Leo shrunk under them, his face tight, shame all over it. Bill stepped forward, his voice low but firm. Enough. Walter doesn't need to fight you by yelling. He's got the law. He's got the town. And he's got friends who won't just sit here while you try to get rid of him. This stops now. The room went quiet. The only sound was the steady tick of my watch. Amelia's chest was going up and down, her hands shaking, but she didn't say anything. Leo dropped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I turned to the banker. Thank you for making it clear. He nodded. I'll update the file. Unless Mr. Sterling says otherwise, nothing moves forward. With that, he left, leaving the weight of his words hanging in the air. George tipped his hat. Walter, you ever need a witness? I'll stand by you. Then he, too, stepped out, the door closing softly behind him. Bill stayed for a moment longer, his eyes meeting mine. He gave a small nod, a reminder of the handshake that had started this team up, then followed the others out. The silence that came after was so loud it hurt. Amelia stood still, her eyes fixed on me with a hate she didn't even try to hide. Leo sat, broken, his hands covering a face that had once looked so much like mine. Finally I spoke. This house isn't just wood and nails. It's history. It's what means something. And what means something doesn't just go away because someone's in a hurry. You both thought you could write me out. But you forgot I've been writing longer than you've been alive. I picked up my cane, walked past them, and went up the stairs slowly but steadily. At the top, I stopped and looked back. Leo lifted his head, his eyes wet, his mouth open like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. Amelia stood next to him, her fists clenched, her face set like stone. I left them there in the mess they had made for themselves, and went back to my room. I sat at the desk, opened my notebook and wrote. Today the storm broke. Leo crumbled. Amelia raged. The house held, and I stayed. As I put the pen down, the weight I had been carrying for weeks got a little lighter. Not gone, not forgotten, but lighter. Outside, the gray clouds split just enough for a bit of sun to touch the maple stump in the yard. Helen would have called it a sign. I closed the notebook, put my watch on top, and whispered into the quiet. The day of falling apart has come. And it wasn't mine.